Well, as I say, you're all very welcome. Delighted to meet you all online, although we would have loved to meet you in person for this, the NasCSO Roundtable meeting for the Dublin MEP constituency. So our idea here today was to bring a diverse kind of a range of civil society organisations together, representatives from each, to tell us a bit about your work, ways that you could be supported more by Europe, by your MEPs, and ways that we can support you indeed from European Movement Ireland. That's the organisation that we work with, and we are the organisation that was tasked with running NasCSO just for this year. And as part of that, we are running a series of meetings like these, all online, unfortunately. I had hoped they would be 50-50 online and in person, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately. But still, we found that the meetings we have had online have seen lots of engagement and lots of kind of connections being developed between civil society organisations that maybe see possibility for collaboration, and indeed between the civil society representatives and the MEPs. So in any way we can facilitate those kind of connections and relationships being developed, don't hesitate to contact us afterwards or raise it during the meeting. So just to tell you a little bit about EM Ireland, we are here since 1954 and the longest established NGO working on European affairs in Ireland. And our goal is to develop these connections between Ireland and Europe. So you can see very clearly why we were tasked with running the NasCSO project, which is more specifically for civil society organisations and European Parliament representatives. So the idea, as I say, of our organisation is to communicate and develop these connections, and indeed to inform people about all things Europe, the latest developments on Brexit, stimulating debate, starting conversation about Europe, about Europe's future, and being sure that people's voices are heard from across Ireland. So one of the programmes that we run, for example, is around the Conference on the Future of Europe, which you may or may not have heard of, as sort of a Europe-wide initiative to get people talking about the future of Europe. And we've been holding events online as well with people across Ireland to hear their thoughts on Europe's future. And we're feeding that back then into a report to the European Commission and indeed to our own government here in Ireland. And if you'd like to know more about that or be involved in that kind of thing, we'd love to hear from you as well. Just reach out to us and we will set you up with a meeting in that regard too. So we're also about promoting public engagement and working with our members. We're very much a membership-based organisation across Ireland, and our members range in everything from student members, perhaps people who are studying European studies, to individual memberships, people who perhaps lived in Brussels and have come home and are interested in the European project, and then organisations who want to know more and how they can support, for example, their own clients in their own organisations around Brexit and things like that, or just sort of want to be part of the movement, the European movement indeed. We're part of a much broader network called European Movement International, and indeed these organisations vary right across Europe, and indeed further afield from Europe. There are also organisations in countries that would like to join the EU in the future. So we're across 34 countries, 39 national councils, and our CEO in EM Ireland, Noel, is also the Vice President of EM International. So this is a recent development, and it's great to have an Irish woman and someone from our organisation, someone representing Ireland, there on this huge international kind of platform to share more about Ireland's place in Europe and the challenges facing Ireland after things such as Brexit. So as I've said, NasCSO is all about connecting you folks, civil society organisations, with the European Parliament, and most directly, I suppose, with your MEPs. And NASC is the Irish word for connection. So that's the sort of play on words that we've done there. If that didn't make sense, I know people often stumble on it. But as I say, it's all about connecting and developing relationships and being sure that organisations are clear on the supports that they can get from the European Parliament and from the EU more broadly. Some of you, I imagine, are super au fait and you've applied for funding and this, that, the other. And then some of you, this might be your first introduction to how your organisation can work with the EU or be supported by your MEPs. So we'll have a diversity in sort of knowledge. So excuse me if you feel it's too basic in parts, and apologies if you think it's too advanced. We try to kind of cater for everybody. But that is where the meeting format of this, the Q&A, is really important, where we'd love to hear from you as to what you you would like to see or what you would like as regards supports. The European Parliament, lots we could say, but essentially acting as a voice for the European citizens and representing citizens at EU level. So it's all about, the European Parliament is all about parliamentary democracy and engaging with and influencing debate at EU level. So this project, as I say, involves a series of meetings. We've been going around the country virtually with organisations in all different sectors. And at this point now, we're looking at the 3 MEP constituency regions. So you've joined us today for the one in the Dublin region, and we will be holding ones with the Midlands Northwest region and the Ireland South region too. So our first series, which you can watch back online if any of those are of interest to you, we had different MEPs speaking at those. They were focused on the sort of areas of interest to the civil society organisations. This round now is more about the regions and connecting a range of civil society organisations in specific regions to their elected MEPs in that region too. So this is an opportunity to engage directly with the MEPs, to see what they can do for you, to hear about their work and where their focus is at the moment. So we do the programme purely through Irish as well. If anyone speaks Irish, or if you have an Irish language officer in your organisation or anything like that, you can do everything through Gaeilge freisin, and there's lots of information there. Aaron Steve Grace on through Gaeilge. So these are just some of the meetings, as I mentioned, we've done before, and you can watch all of these back on our website in case any of these could be of interest to you and the areas you're working on yourselves. So we'd love to stay in touch with you after this. Please do check in with us. As I say, ask that question there. How can we support you? How can we help you further develop your connections with your MEPs? Or indeed, if there were other civil society organisations here today that you thought we could really work together or we could learn from each other, let us know if you'd like us to set up meetings between any of you. And you can keep up to date with everything we've going on, our news, our upcoming meetings. Indeed, if you said you'd like to join for one of the other regional meetings or be kept up to speed with what we have going on, just sign up there on our website if you haven't done already. And I also mentioned in emails to you, so just to be sure, we have some nice water bottles, notebooks, pens and things like that from the project, and we'd love to send some out to you or your organisation, your colleagues. So if you're working from home or you'll be in the office, just send us on your address and we would be delighted to send a few bits out to you, especially in the absence of being able to offer you lunch today. Lots of information there, and as I say, I'll share these slides with you afterwards, but essentially about the intergroups and the committees of the European Parliament, how the Parliament functions, how things are debated, the issues are broken up, and how legislation eventually gets passed. So the intergroups and the committees, you'll hear from Barry Andrews as an example of the intergroups and the committees that he sits on, and they're all focused in on specific areas. So our elected MEPs from Ireland will each focus on specific areas of interest to them. As I say, I won't go into lots of detail here, but just remembering the 81 MEPs and the committees focused on different areas, and perhaps it would be worth thinking about your organisation, which intergroups and which committees are of relevance to you, which of your Irish MEPs sit on those, are they in the Dublin region, and if not to worry, they're still your elected MEPs for Ireland. So it's worth contacting them and it's worth seeing what their committees and intergroups are working on too. And just to introduce ourselves, who's here today, I'm Lisa Nickenbrev. I am Head of Communications and Education and the Project Lead of NasCSO, and I'm joined by my colleagues Muireann and Caoimhe, who work with me on NasCSO in EM Ireland, and also, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll introduce him in a couple of moments, Thomas Kramer, who's the Community Manager at the European Parliament Liaison Office in Ireland. And just before we close off, just to highlight a couple of things, and again, this is one slide where I could give you many slides, but it's interesting sometimes to take a look at what the EU does for your region in particular, and we'll send you on some links as well of where you can look at specific regions in specific countries to see what's being done by the EU there. So for Dublin, just a couple of highlights across some different areas, education in particular, we've highlighted here. Horizon 2020, of course, and it's funding lots of projects and programs in Dublin. The TU Dublin, I'm sure you've heard of, formerly IT Blanchardstown, BIT, and this is with 7 other academic partners. And the idea behind this is to start a European technical university. So you may have heard that the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, paid a visit to TU Dublin there recently. And I suppose this is what this is all about, linking up European universities. And of course, access to the European single market means that we have lots of international IT and pharmaceutical businesses in Dublin. And just to mention, a few of you who are here today, and we'll have some more people joining us as the afternoon goes on. Unfortunately, lots of people have afternoon meetings, so they said they may join us at 5 o'clock. It's a disappointing thing on a Friday evening when you have lots of meetings, but we're really grateful for you all for joining, and you'll hear from a couple of other people as they join later on. So as I say, stay connected. Let us know how we can support you, how we can offer you any guidance or connect you to your MEPs more, or any information you're looking for really about the European Union, about Europe, about Ireland's place in Europe, Brexit, and so on and so forth. Don't hesitate to check in with us, because NasCSO, I guess, is one of the many programs that we do, and we love to connect in with civil society organizations in a variety of ways. So our website is there, and you will have received this by email, and of course we are posting across social media too with the hashtag NasCSO. And Barry Andrews will be joining us shortly. So just a little bit about Barry here. He is, of course, part of the Renew Europe group. So these European Parliament groups where when our MEPs leave their political parties in Ireland to go to Europe, to go and act as MEPs, they join these political groupings in the EU. So Barry is part of the Renew Europe group. And again, if you are looking to connect more with your MEPs or get support from them, it can be worth seeing which groups they're in and seeing what they're working on or where their political lines are. And he's, of course, a member of Fianna Fáil here in Ireland. And I won't again go into his history, but Barry was CEO of GOAL. He was also Director General of the IEA, you may have heard of, an organisation quite like our own, focused on European affairs. And so Barry knows in depth, I suppose, what we do, and is a great expert in all things Europe. And some of the committees that he is on, for example, the International Trade Committee, Development, and Barry's also working at the moment on sustainable goals, which is a super broad area, but you will hear from him shortly about that too. Also working on a special committee on foreign interference in democratic processes, including disinformation, which I'm sure is something many of you have sort of encountered in the last year and a half. Disinformation, misinformation, and these sort of false facts and bits of news that are circulating. And there's a huge amount of work for the European Union to do in that area. So without further ado, I might just pass to Thomas to just say a brief hello, and hopefully we'll be joined by Barry soon. I'll also come around just to say a quick hello to you all, but as I say, I'll give you a proper bit of time to introduce yourselves and the work of your organizations when Barry joins us. Thomas.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, welcome from me, T. Sort of for those of you who probably wouldn't know 100% what the European Parliament Liaison Office is, basically we're a small team based in Dublin that is part of the European Parliament organisation, so to say, and we're here in Ireland to make sure that if anybody in Ireland has a question for either an MEP or about the EU in general, or about the European Parliament in general, and they don't quite know who to ask, they can come to us and we can direct them to the right person. And sort of I'm quite looking forward to this meeting today, because sort of in my role here in the liaison office, I'm working together with sort of civil society organizations and also with our social media accounts. And yeah, I think it's always interesting to sort of to see what civil society organizations have to say, and I think it would be great for us also sort of to hear from you in the future, and if you have any ideas of what you would like to do. And maybe just to make a quick announcement, because we have this online community, so to say, it's called together.eu, and if you would like to engage with the European Parliament on a more light-hearted way, that's a great way to do it. We'll have a pop quiz online, unfortunately. It's going to be now on the 13th of December. We've got an introduction to EU basics. That's going to be next week on the 23rd. Just check together.eu. There's a range of sort of events that you could participate in, all sort of quite easygoing events, so to say. So have a look at that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing sort of your questions, your contributions. I've worked in civil society organizations myself in the past, so I think this is particularly interesting for me as well. And yeah, I hope it's going to be an interesting afternoon for us all.
Great, thanks, Thomas. And I'll just pass to my colleagues, anyone who'd like to jump in and say hello.
Hi, so just a quick hello, I'm Caoimhe. I'm working on the NAS team with European Movement Ireland, and I previously actually worked as a trainee in the European Parliament Liaison Office in Ireland. So it's great to kind of have a project that mixes the two together.
I'll say hello as well. I'm similar to Caoimhe, I'm working here on NASC, and I'm just really excited to hear what your organizations have been doing. I've been aware of them for a while, so looking forward to hearing from you.
Great stuff, thanks. Folks, could I ask you just to introduce yourselves and even a one-liner or two maybe about your organisation, and as I say, you can give us a bit more detail then when Barry joins to save you repeating yourself. Sarah, perhaps there from the Rediscovery Centre.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Sarah, and I'm the Chief Executive of the Rediscovery Centre, which is the National Centre for the Circular Economy. We're based in Ballymun. We've been operational there since 2004, and we are a social enterprise. We operate 4 reuse organisations: Rediscover Furniture, Rediscover Fashion, Rediscover Paint, and Rediscover Cycling. We run a visitor and education centre and a centre of excellence, I suppose, for the circular economy. And we host national education programs for climate action. And we also have a research and policy unit as well to support the transition to a circular economy here in Ireland.
Great, Sarah, thanks. I've always been a big fan of the Rediscovery Centre myself. I'm from up near there and my whole family love it. It's a great project, so fair play.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear. I hope they were all at the Let's Talk Science Festival last weekend. It was a great event.
Oh, fabulous. I saw some about it online. Yes, indeed. Stephanie from FLAC, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, how are you? So I'm Stephanie Lord and I'm Legal and Policy Officer for FLAC, and we're an independent legal rights NGO focused on access to justice issues. We do quite a few things. We have legal advice, we have a telephone information referral helpline that people can call, and we had about 13,000 calls I think last year in that, so it's quite a big service. We also have a range of legal advice clinics, free legal advice clinics that people could go and access legal assistance if they can't afford to access a private lawyer. One of the issues around COVID was all of our clinics had to move to phone, so they're not in person at the moment. And then we also have a strategic litigation service where we identify cases that are in the public interest and would take them on behalf of individuals. We have a service called PILA. It's the Public Information Law section of FLAC, and we would connect NGOs to volunteer lawyers who will provide legal advice and information to those NGOs. We also have a research and advocacy function, which is more my area. And then we also have a series of very targeted legal initiatives like the Roma Clinic, where we deliver legal advice for the Roma community. And we have a traveller clinic as well. And we are currently in the process of establishing an LGBTQ clinic. So we're quite busy, and we're glad to be here. So thanks very much.
We'll have Bella join us from Shout Out, an LGBT organisation, later. So again, Stephanie, this idea of connecting ye as well as connecting you to the European Parliament, however we can support. Siobhan, I might turn to you.
Hi, I'm Siobhan Gagan and I'm Director of Common Ground, and Common Ground is an arts organisation. We're based in Dublin 8. We're very small, we're 1.5 people. And we host residencies in both the lodge that we're based in, beside Golden Bridge Cemetery, and in Studio 468, which is located in St Andrews Community Centre in Rialto. A lot of our residencies are around different spatial justice issues, around especially, I'm sure all of you are aware of the massive changes that are happening in Dublin 8. So that's the rising tide that doesn't float all boats. So we're observing that and witnessing that through a lot of our artists' work. One of our projects at the moment is called The Just City. It's with an artist called Kate O'Shea, and that began when the pandemic began. And so a lot of our work has had to reconfigure how we can work in groups and how we can meet with local groups, because most of our work takes place with community development projects, communities of place or interest. And this year we did a big project, or we launched a big project called Mapping Green Dublin, which we did with UCD Geography. And now that's moving into another phase called Mapping Green Dublin 2, where we continue to support local initiatives around greening, particularly in public space and on public land or in social housing complexes. And one of our artists, Pat Curran, just had an exhibition in Palace Projects, which is located in the Coombe, and a lot of his paintings were reflective of the changing social demographics of Dublin 8, particularly of a now gone Fatima Mansions, changing Dolphin House, and then gone St Michael's Estate. So you can see a lovely video of Pat online on Open House.
Siobhan, I'll share you the slides you sent on to me later on in the meeting, absolutely. Barry Andrews, thanks so much for joining us. Can you see us?
Hi, Lisa. Yes, I can see you and a few people.
Barry's had a busy schedule today running around, so really appreciate you joining us at this.
Yeah. No
Barry, we'd actually just come to the point of the meeting where we were going to pass over to you. So I might pass to you and then we'll go around just to introduce everybody to you just after, if that suits.
Yeah. So would you like me just to introduce myself, or Lisa, or would you?
You can carry on, Barry, as planned, with the few pointers that you're going to share with us about your work, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Okay, Lisa. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Barry Andrews is my name, and I'm one of the MEPs in Dublin since February 2020. You might remember that if you did vote in the European election, it was in May 2019. So the reason I wasn't an MEP until February 2020 was because a number of the seats were held back for if the British left the European Union. And you might remember that Boris Johnson won this election in December 2019. And because he won that election, he was able to get the UK out of the EU. And the only upsides to the British leaving was that I got to be an MEP. I was in cold storage for 8 months of torture and pain. So I'm afraid to say I'm completely conflicted about Brexit. I'm the only Irish person to have benefited from Brexit. So that's the strange story of how I came into the European Parliament. And it was well up and running by the time I came along. So I sort of missed out at the beginning of it. And then COVID happened almost immediately. So lockdown happened, and that meant not going over to Brussels at all. The normal thing you would do is you'd go over on a Monday on a flight to Brussels, and then you come back on Thursday or Friday. And that's what most MEPs do. But during lockdown, most of 2020, I didn't go over at all. So I just didn't know anybody. I didn't know the procedures very well. I didn't know the levers, the points of influence, and it took me a long time to get going. But eventually, towards the end of last year, about a year ago, I started being able to travel over. And now, even though the COVID numbers are as bad as they are, it is returned to normality. So I'm going over every week. Just came back this morning, actually. And I will go to Strasbourg on Monday. So every month there's what's called a plenary in the European Parliament. Unlike our own parliament, the Dáil meets every week. but the European Parliament only meets once a month for 3 or 4 days. That's a detail most people aren't aware of. And in all the other weeks, we do committee work. So the European Parliament has very extensive legislative powers, the power to make law. And I'm involved in one legislative file at the moment. We're making a law called due diligence. And what that is about is supply chains. So if Apple is buying lithium or copper for their phones, and they're getting it from somewhere like the Democratic Republic of Congo, and there are children working in the mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and their working conditions are appalling and they shouldn't be working at all, then Apple have to report all of this detail and we have to know all about it. And the whole idea of due diligence, therefore, is to clean up supply chains. Now, the proposal will be published by the Commission next month in December. And then we, the European Parliament, will start pulling it apart and putting our own complexion on it, amendments and all that. And then the member states will start pulling it apart. That's Micheál Martin and his government. So there's the three institutions. Commission's proposing, and we, the European Parliament, are co-legislators with the Council, that's the member states. And we make, we decide finally what that due diligence law is going to take, what it's going to look like. It will become, it's a directive. So each of the member states then has to pass, has to what they call transpose it into national law. So here we are in November 2021. When will this law actually apply? The earliest it will apply is 2025. So you can see why the European Parliament moves fairly slowly at the best of times. But from time to time, it can be very quick. And I think we saw that in the COVID response, because there were two major developments that happened at European level, because the European Union doesn't do health normally. That's a member state competence, or incompetence, you could say, in the case of the Irish Health Service. But I think the procurement of the COVID vaccine was done extremely quickly and distributed throughout the 27 member states. Now we're into booster shots now, and we can have a discussion all day about, you know, whether we should be concentrated on global equity of distribution. And the second thing is the digital COVID certificate. Both of those things are done very quickly, which is very unlike Europe. But so lawmaking is slow, it's deliberative, and it takes a long time. So my main duties, apart from that in the European Parliament, very quickly, Lisa, is that I'm on the International Trade Committee. So all the free trade agreements that the European Union does, we pull them apart, we look at them. There was a proposal for an investment agreement with China, but that's been abandoned because of all the human rights abuses that happen in China. There's a proposal for a free trade agreement with the South American countries called Mercosur, but there's a huge opposition to that because of deforestation. There's a proposed Canada free trade agreement called CETA, but that's been opposed because of multilateral investment courts. There was supposed to be a North Atlantic trade agreement called TTIP, but that was opposed. So you can see there's trade agreements are not very popular with people because they think that a lot of people perceive it being damaging to the environment, damaging for human rights, undermining workers' rights throughout the world. So it's hard to get free trade agreements across the line. The second thing I'm very involved with is Brexit. I'm on what's called the Parliamentary Partnership Assembly. So that's the European Parliament's delegation to the UK, and I'm also part of the. I deal with Mara Sefcovic on the withdrawal agreement, and then the final area, an area of huge interest to me, and might be of interest to you, is international development. So I'm a member of the International Development Committee, and I really enjoy that work, and possibly my background because I worked for Gold for 4 years. And I'm also chair of the SDG Alliance, the Sustainable Development Goals Alliance in the European Parliament, which is an informal group of like-minded MEPs. So I chair that and we drive that agenda out of my office. So between all those things, it keeps me really busy. Next week, as I say, is plenary. I have responsibility for one file next week, which is on the unrest in Cameroon, of all places. So I'm managing that for my party, the Renew Europe group. So that's a quick outline. Lisa, is that okay? Would you like me to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll unfortunately we had quick introductions from people, but I might pass around for everyone who's with us from the civil society organization tell us a bit about their work so that you're kind of clued in there, Barry, with what everyone's doing and working on. And then we might carry on with a bit of a discussion, folks. And as I mentioned, I'm just recording this part of it for those who couldn't attend. But indeed, when we jump into our Q&A and our discussion, I'll stop recording so that you can have maybe a bit more of a frank and open conversation. So folks, if you wouldn't mind, would you tell us a little bit about your organizations? Siobhan, I'll start with you and share the slides that you sent on to me if you'd like.
Thanks for that, Lisa. I want to pop it up there. So as I was saying earlier, Common Ground is a small arts organisation located in Inchicore in Dublin 8. We work across Dublin 8, and you'll see a map there. And the map is showing a lot of the cultural organisations that are located around Kilmainham and Inchicore. And I remember very many years ago, Barry, when you were in your role as Special Minister for Young People, I met you in St Michael's Youth Project. And where we're based is a little lodge house, which is just at this, I'm pointing at it, but you can't see it. It's just off Emmett Road, and it's the former St Michael's Estate, which was that's it there. There you go, Lisa, you've got it. And I suppose what the interesting thing about where we landed, if you wouldn't mind moving on, Lisa, to the next slide, this was a large house that was largely neglected for about 8, 9, 10 years. It was owned by Glasnevin Trust. This graveyard is the first Catholic graveyard in Ireland. It was opened by Daniel O'Connell. The Cosgraves are buried there. And apparently one of the trees was planted by O'Connell. But when we worked in the area, we were based in a small office, and we identified this building as a potential arts and cultural hub. It's tiny. And we approached Glasnevin Trust in 2016 to redevelop the building with them, in partnership with them. And it took till September 2019 before we could move in, and we got a small grant from the Department of Arts. And basically the idea was that it would have workshop, community stroke artist workshop spaces and a live workspace. But by March 2020, we were all told to go home. And unfortunately for us, that meant that the live workspace wasn't going to operate. If you could just move on to the next slide, Lisa, please. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the work we do with artists. And one artist we work with is Shodine O'Sullivan. Shodine is now the artist in residence in the Digital Hub. And we work with Shodine from when she started to graduate from NCAD about 10 years ago. And Shodine is an activist artist, an ecological activist artist. And she set up the South Circular Road Community Garden, which is one of the first community gardens in Dublin. And a lot of the work that we've done with Shodine is around looking at public space, free food, and access to owning public space by local residents. So you'll see here, we would set up grafting workshops of Irish heritage apple trees from UCD in the Rosemount Centre. And we did these in Studio 468, and you can see the Studio 468 space, which is in St Andrews Community Centre. And you can see one, the men's shed, Dublin 8 men's shed, they made signs for the hard graft project that Shodine proposed. So over 22 years, we've had different artists come in and out of Studio 468, and Shodine has been one that, has returned at different occasions to do different pieces of work. And Hardgraft was the piece she did as part of a project we had called Citizen Artist. If you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide, Lisa. So Hardgraft was basically taking those trees, creating a nursery, and we took those Irish heritage scions, grafted them onto rootstock, and we placed them in a nursery that we created in Richmond Barracks just before it became, around the time when it first opened. And then we transferred some of those with the local men's group and with the local school, which is the Mercy, the model, here in Inchicore, and then down to Dolphin House. And as part of the first phase of regeneration of Dolphin House, we negotiate with the architects there through the community association there that there would be an orchard planted in the first development. And that orchard, apparently 8 fruit trees make an orchard. So that was the premise we went on. So Shodine worked on that with us till 2019, and at that time then we were introduced via Shodine to Gerald Mills from UCD Geography. If you wouldn't mind the next slide. So this became a big research project that we partnered UCD Geography on with Shodine, and there was a researcher called Al McClavin who worked on it. And unfortunately for us, we launched this project on the 7th of March 2020, and then in the next week we went into lockdown. So we had to really rethink how we could access community and do our research on Mapping Green Dublin. And it was very specific to Dublin 8, and it really tracked with Gerald Mills in UCD the tree canopy in Dublin 8, which is quite poor. The worst is Dublin 1. And it was to look at different pathways for community to engage in public space. And one of the interesting projects that came out of that, if you wouldn't mind the next slide, Lisa, is that Shodine did a project called Plots, which responded to the 2K, 5K radius that everybody had to go through in I suppose, from March right through possibly to May. And these became radius maps, and we invited the public to look at their own environment and to track their routes. They could either draw it, or they could do it on an app that we provided. So I suppose one of the outcomes is that Mapping Green Dublin was launched. It was EPA funded, and in 2022, this year, Common Ground received some funding from an insurance company, believe it or not, called Ecclesiastical Insurance. And they normally insure church buildings, but we won €10,000 from them and some money from BAM, who are developing the new children's hospital, to continue some elements of Mapping Green Dublin, as we call it, Mapping Green Dublin 2, in 2022. So that's to try and continue working in Dolphin House, working at St Michael's Estate, or what's called Tyrone Place in 2 public housing complexes, and then to develop the Greening Forum, which emerged from Mapping Green Dublin. That includes some work along the canal, looking at issues of the towpath and general, I suppose, public access to green space. So that's just one piece of work that we do, and I just decided I'd just show you that as a piece of a work that we do with community and with artists. So it's not us on our own. All of our work takes place in collaboration with local groups and artists that we work with, and that's usually made through a public call as well. And we're funded by the Arts Council and funded by Dublin City Council. So there you go.
And no pressure on everybody else. Siobhan was the only one to send in slides. So really helpful, Siobhan, to really get a good glimpse of what you've been doing. And I find the radius work really interesting. I'm going to look that up. I might turn then to Sarah in the Rediscovery Centre.
Sure. Hi, Barry. We met a few weeks ago, actually. You were up at the
Yeah. Hi, nice to see you again, Sarah. And thanks, Siobhan, as well. I should have said as well. Thank you.
So yeah, we're the National Centre for the Circular Economy. We're based in Ballymun. We have been in operation since 2004, and I guess we're seen as a kind of a creative movement to connect people, ideas, and resources to support a just transition to the circular economy. Our work is quite diverse. It's a bottom-up organisation, but it's supported by local government and indeed the Government of Ireland. So we are engaged in labour activation initiatives and climate action activities. So essentially what we do is we run social enterprises which reduce waste and create opportunities for people who are at distance from the workplace to get training. And then through that training process, we provide them to access to work. So 90% of people that we work with go on to get jobs. And we also have a national education program, which is helping to develop, I suppose, the next generation of scientists and specialists in technology and engineering and maths to address the social and climate issues that we're all facing. So yeah, our work is quite broad. We have an education and visitor centre in Ballymun, and we have lots of visitors there who are coming along to either engage in our education programs, our formal education programs, or indeed in our non-vocational training programs where they are more engaged in, developing their own personal skills and getting access to work. And then we have, public engagement activities as well, and we run festivals, which we've just completed a science festival, and we are supporting that, very ambitious transition to a circular economy. We just recently were awarded Circular Economy Hotspot for 2023, which means we will be enabling a spotlight to be shone on Ireland to show actually the great work that is actually happening within Dublin and indeed Ireland in transitioning, and all of the bioeconomy initiatives and the social enterprise initiatives and the great design and manufacturing advances that are being made to kind of reduce our environmental impact of day-to-day consumption. So yeah, it's quite diverse. There's a lot going on. And I know when you were up there recently, Barry, you were at least able to see some of the work that we're engaged in, but it is very much about building stronger communities and addressing climate breakdown, really.
Sarah, really appreciate that and really appreciate you joining. Stephanie.
Hi, how are you? My name is Stephanie Lord and I'm the Legal and Policy Officer with FLAC, the Free Legal Advice Centres. So we're an independent NGO and we work on access to justice issues, meeting unmet legal need in Ireland. We do a number of things. We have a free legal information helpline that anyone can call and receive legal information related to any area, or we'll refer them on to another organisation. We have a range of legal advice clinics. We had 72 in-person volunteer staffed clinics prior to COVID, but of course when COVID happened they had to move to more online and phone-based services. So that's where they're at now. We did previously provide specialist legal advice to MABs, and we also have a role in providing second-tier advice to people who work in the Citizens Information Centres. We have a public information project within FLAC where we connect NGOs to volunteer lawyers who will assist them in legal matters relating to the operation of their organisations or their service users. We have a research and advocacy function where we write policy recommendations and engage with government consultations, and we sit in a number of sort of consultative bodies with government departments. And then we also have our strategic litigation section where we take public interest cases on behalf of individuals, and then we have targeted legal services to disadvantaged communities. So we have a current clinic that provides legal services to the Roma community, and then we have another clinic that provides legal services to the traveller community, and we're currently in the process of establishing an LGBTQ clinic. So I suppose COVID was a particular challenge for us in terms of moving our in-person services online. Some of the services had to, because they were legal services, some had to remain in person, and that was a difficulty. And I suppose, sorry, I just noticed my internet connection is quite unstable here, so apologies if I suddenly drop off somewhere. But I suppose one of the things that we found is that we're really, you know, a sort of sticking plaster service in the absence of the provision of a fully comprehensive state-funded broad civil legal aid system that people can access. So I suppose resources are always an issue for us. We could do an awful lot more if we had the resources to do it, but that can be a difficulty. And then I suppose assessing, because there is never really any assessment on a national level of unmet legal need broadly within Ireland. So in the absence of that, you're sort of always tipping around the edges, so to speak. So a meeting hard to reach communities and delivering legal services to them can be quite a difficulty too. So it's great to be here to be able to talk a bit about that today. And I just want to thank Lisa and the European Movement for inviting me back along, and to thank you for organising the event.
Come along, Stephanie, especially on a Friday evening, and to everybody. Barry, I'm not sure if you'd like to come in there on anything you heard or we had mentioned.
Yeah, well, just to say that I mean, it's my old age, but I'm trying to remember, like when I was Minister for Children, Siobhan, we had such stress at the time. We had cabinet meetings every 10 minutes, it felt like, and that whole 3 years went by in a blur. So I don't remember going to the, but I do remember, Sarah, the Rediscovery Centre course, because it was only a couple of weeks ago. So, it is absolutely fantastic. Everybody should visit the Rediscovery Centre. It's just really surprising every time you go there. It's fantastic. And we're hoping to do an event there at some stage. You know, when we're having the European, all the MEPs in my group will be in Dublin in June, and so we're having our Congress in Dublin, and we hope to have a session up there if possible. And well, Stephanie, we haven't met, but I'm a lawyer by training myself, and I think the work you do is so important. And you're right about the broader civil legal aid. It's I don't know if you can track unmet legal need. The extent of it must be a real issue. So look, just to, you know, I'd say to Lisa that, you know, if there's some aspects of this where I can help you guys to connect up with city council, central government, European funding, etc., because, you know, all the way through the presentation, there's a couple of themes coming up about green transition, certainly for Sarah, and the digital hub was mentioned by Siobhan. You know, so these are key priorities right now for the European Union, and I'm really enthusiastic to support CSOs, because I was the head of a CSO in Dublin, and I know how hard it is to make ends meet, and we call ourselves not-for-profit, and that's probably the worst thing we could ever call ourselves, because we do have to make more than we spend. And even if we don't pay a dividend or anything, we still are having to make ends meet, and that's a real challenge. So that's fine, Lisa. I hope that's.
Thanks, Barry.